Welcome back to Films Retold. Today, we're going to be discussing the alternate personality that is Jake Lockley from Marvel's Moon Knight. If you're new to my channel, remember to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a theory or breakdown. Marvel has been killing it in the TV landscape with their Disney Plus shows, so it's no surprise that Moon Knight has gained major popularity in such a short amount of time. But the character on which the show is based has far less name recognition. Moon Knight, at best, is a C-level Marvel superhero. Although he's had many solo comics since 1980, none of them have lasted more than 40 issues. But who is Moon Knight exactly? Moon Knight is a superhero who defends those who travel under the moon, aided by his high-tech weaponry and mystical powers provided by the Egyptian god Khonshu. You can think of Moon Knight as being Marvel's answer to Batman. However, I would argue that as a superhero, Moon Knight is a much more flawed character. An anti-hero, if you will. He's a hero who does heroic acts, and does them to achieve heroic goals. However, the manner in which he does those heroic deeds often lead to extreme violence, or even death for his opponents, not unlike characters such as the Punisher or Deadpool. Khonshu chose Mark Spector as his avatar when Mark was near death. Because of this contract with Khonshu, Mark is able to call upon the Moon Knight armor, along with a host of other abilities. However, Mark has a condition called dissociative identity disorder, aka multiple personality disorder. The comics handled this a little differently from the show. Originally, Mark was the only personality as Moon Knight. He created other identities in order to become a better hero. This was later retconned in the comics and rewrote to say that he always had this disorder and that it was caused by childhood trauma. The show seems to be going off the newer version of the comics with the creation of Steven's personality as a way to escape childhood trauma caused by his mother. While we spent most of the season learning about Steven and Mark, there was actually a whole other personality that existed in the comics, and that was Jake Lockley. In the comics, Jake Lockley was a New York City taxi driver with his finger on the pulse of the deepest reaches of the criminal underworld and a wealth of criminal connections, not unlike Batman's alter ego, Matches Malone. Jake Lockley is a much more violent personality lurking inside Mark. You can think of Jake as being closer to Mark in terms of what he's willing to do in order to finish the job, only Jake has no remorse or guilt for his actions while doing it. For that reason, Jake is the personality that takes over when things are going really bad for Mark. He's the one who takes over to do the things that Mark and Steven can't. Even though the TV show is focused on Steven and Mark's personality, I believe it's also shown us Jake a couple times without the viewers even realizing it. The first one appears to have come in episode 1, The Goldfish Problem. In it, Steven grants puzzled to learn that he's scheduled a date with his museum co-worker. Given how Mark's in love with Layla, it made little sense for him to be the one to arrange the meetup. Jake Lockley does have a violent personality, but he's also extremely charismatic. In the comics, Lockley was relatively sociable, being able to find people to be his street informants. In fact, he befriended a diner owner named Gina and her children, as well as a homeless man named Bertrand. At one point in the comics, Jake actually had a love interest named Marlene, and they even had a daughter together. Here's the catch though. Marlene and Jake agreed to keep the baby a secret from Steven and Mark. So it's not outside the realm of possibility that it was actually Jake Lockley who arranged this date with Steven's coworker. Then, in episode 3, The Friendly Type, Mark loses control of his body and awakens to find he had killed 2 people he was tracking. Horrified by this, he asked Steven what he had done, to which Steven replied, it wasn't him. This again tracks with the conditions of Jake's emergence. He shows up to do the things Mark and Steven can't. This would be a setting where Jake Lockley would feel very comfortable in. After that, in episode 4, The Tomb, shortly after Mark woke up in the asylum, he found a sarcophagus with Steven trapped inside. They explored the place together until they came across another sarcophagus shaking violently, which was most likely housing Jake Lockley. I believe the last glimpse we see of Jake Lockley is in episode 5, Asylum. Right after Mark sees Toweret for the first time, he wakes up in front of Arthur playing the role as Mark's psychiatrist. It's here that we see a very different Mark. I believe this is actually Jake Lockley's personality that's being shown. The bruised nose, the New York accent, and his willingness to jump straight to aggression are all signs of Jake. The next time we cut to Mark, his nose is healed, and he's much more docile, telling us that this is Mark's original personality. What do you guys think? Have we seen Jake Lockley in the TV show? Will we get to see him in episode 6 of the season finale? Or do you think the plan is to introduce him into season 2? I'd love to hear what you guys think. Drop me a comment and let me know. I'll be releasing some new content on the Moon Knight finale, so if you're interested in seeing that, please subscribe so you don't miss it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.